So I'm Nico Viber. I work in the VMware Cloud and AWS business unit. This is Emre.
Yeah, Emre Grici. Hi, everyone. I work in VMware in the NSX team, responsible for the global accounts, and I'm based out of Amsterdam in Holland. Yes.
Good stuff. So session today we'll walk through a number of, we'll have to start with a recap, just to make sure that everyone is familiar with VMC. And then Emre will cover some of the new things we've announced yesterday around new NSX Advanced Services running on VMC. And I'll cover a number of use cases and best practices and talk about what customers are actually doing on the platform and how they're building their network design on VMC. We'll cover a couple of things that we're working on and some of the roadmap features. Whoops, and this one. So just be familiar with this slide. So we'll have a couple of discussions about the roadmap. So this is hopefully the last year I'm going to do a recap of VMC. I think by next year, hopefully everyone will be very familiar on the platform. So what has happened is we went into a partnership with AWS about 3 years ago, and we've been working together on building a hybrid cloud where we could essentially get run the VMware platform on AWS bare metal. So that's something we've been working together. And the idea was to provide a best of both worlds, the ability to leverage the scale and elasticity of AWS, but with a consistency of VMware, right? Of essentially using your VMware applications and your VMware skills, but on the AWS platform. So in just a few minutes, what is VMC? So essentially, it's VMware as a service, right? VMware hyperconverged as a service. Right? It's a service offered by VMware where you go on a console, you click a few buttons, and 2 hours later, you have your VMware Cloud software-defined data center up and running. And you have a dedicated cluster for you where you can run your applications, create VMs, migrate VMs, and it's running on vSphere, vSAN, and NSX. But we, VMware, take care of all the patching, all the upgrading, all the monitoring, all the management of the platform, right? So we take care of all the boring bits, and you get to run your applications and provide services for your users. So as I mentioned, we take care of all the management and the patching. We're actually running on vSphere 6.8 on VMC. Right? We're running on the latest and greatest vSphere software, and same for NSX and vSAN. And because we are running on top of AWS, right, it's all, everything is automated. Right? So as I mentioned, you can create this environment and click a few clicks, and 2 hours later, you have this SDDC up and running. And if you need to expand the capacity, just click a button, and then 5 minutes later, you have a new host added to the cluster. Right? So you don't need to, it's very, very, very quick to scale up and scale down your environment. Right? It's on demand. Obviously, the vast majority of our customers still have an on-premise environment, and they want the ability to use existing tools, existing scripts, and APIs. So, we can leverage things like vRealize automation, vRealize operations to monitor or consume the vCenter in the cloud. Right? That's essentially it's just another vCenter as it is in the cloud. You can also link up the two vCenter together. If you have an on-premise vCenter environment, you can link up in hybrid link mode to the vCenter in the cloud. And then you can have a single inventory view of your VMs, whether they are in the cloud or on-prem. Okay. And on the networking side, which is what this session is focused, we have a number of options, which I will cover in detail in the next slide. The last aspect of this service is integration with native AWS services. So when you launch your VMware Cloud on AWS environments, you will link it up to an AWS account and also to an AWS Virtual Private Cloud, or VPC. And that gives you the ability to essentially have virtual machine running in your vCenter in the cloud to talk to your EC2 instances on AWS. Right? So we set up this blue link here, which is a 25 gig connection between your AWS native environments and your VMware Cloud platform. So you can really start building hybrid application, making the most of the native AWS services like EC2, S3, and also the VMware Cloud SDDC. Now, this is a networking session, and NSX is absolutely key to what we do on VMC. We couldn't have built the VMC without NSX. NSX helps us provide the connectivity options into VMC. That's probably the number one question I get from customers is, okay, I've got this on-prem environment, I've got VMC, how do I link them up together? Okay? So we have a few different options. So if you want to connect to AWS, you can go over the internet, or you can use a Direct Connect. And Direct Connect is like a private link into the AWS data center. And Emery will talk about some of the new things we're adding around this integration. So, but you can use both, right? You can use either for VMC. Well, most customers start with using the internet, and then they will contract a Direct Connect from AWS and start pushing data over the Direct Connect to get better, lower latency and better throughput. So one of the first things you might want to do is build a layer 3 connection. That's something that you want to do is build a IPsec VPN tunnel, for example, over the internet. And what you would have is 2 different IP ranges on both sides. Right? This is just normal layer 3, 172.16.10 on one side, 172.16.20, right? Okay, so it's 2 different IP ranges, as if they are 2 different sites from an IP base. Okay, it's straightforward. Second option is to stretch network. Right? Something we've been doing with NSX for a long time, which is what we call the NSX layer 2 VPN, and that's the ability to stretch a VLAN on-prem all the way to the cloud. Why would you do that? You might have applications that have a hard-coded IP address, and you want to move them to the cloud, but you don't want to have to readdress them. And being able to stretch the network just gives you the ability to then start doing stuff like vMotion, right? And maintain the same IP as you move VM to the cloud. And one thing I should have mentioned is everything is reversible. This is vSphere. So if you were to use VMC, you could also bring it back on-prem if you change your mind, right? Because it's the same format. Here, we don't require you to have NSX license on-prem, right? So that's not a requirement. You can install a free NSX standalone Edge client, which you would install as an OVA on-prem, and it will help you stretch a network all the way to the cloud. That's quite important because that's sometimes a conception that customers have, or I must have NSX on-prem to be able to use VMC. No, you don't. Okay. And the last option we have, which is something we've had for back from the vCloud Air days, it's something called HCX, Hybrid Cloud Extension. And it's the same concept that it can help you stretch network from on-prem to the cloud, but it also adds a layer of one optimization. So if you think about things like compression and one acceleration, we have the ability to do this within VMware Cloud on AWS with HCX. And also it gives you the ability to have retro compatibility with very old version of vSphere, which is 5.0, 5.1. And HCX would be the tool you would use for bulk migration. So I was just doing a customer panel with some VMC customers, and I've moved about 600 VM from on-prem to the cloud in a matter of days using HCX. So this is the best tool to mass migrate virtual machine to the cloud. And again, they can bring it back on-prem if they want to. It's just a quick recap on some of the services we're running on VMC. Make sure everyone has a level setting. Emery, take over.
Thank you very much. So as Nico has mentioned, at the moment, there's a big shift from carrying the workloads in the private clouds and onto the public clouds. So this means that the data does not really reside on a certain spot, like in a data center, forever. And if you have joined the keynote session yesterday by Pat, our CEO, he talked about the virtual cloud networking. And he mentioned a very important topic, a very important keyword there. We are moving from the data centers to the centers of data. The data will not be at, for example, at a certain point in the data center. It can be in a public cloud. It can be in a private cloud. It can be in a telco network. It can be in an edge network, right? It can be in an IoT, industrial IoT environment, can be at the edge of the network. So since we are not able to say the data will reside at a certain place at any time, we need to bring the network and security aspect and the policies to wherever the data may reside. Private cloud, public cloud, and so on and so forth. So virtual cloud networking, you might have heard it already if you have joined the breakout sessions so far, is our way of bringing network and security policies into the domain that the data resides. And NSX is at the heart of this architecture. It is the tool, it is the asset that brings the network and security policies. It's the tool that realizes the network and security policies. This is a quite busy slide, but you can see that for networking and security virtualization, NSX is a tool. And depending on where the data resides, data center, AWS, or another public cloud vendor, the type of NSX changes. The NSX data center is the one that we are focusing on today. So under the hood, in VMC on AWS solution, under the hood, NSX data center is the engine that carries the network and security functionality. I don't want to confuse you immediately. This is not an NSX session. But important to know is NSX data center has two flavors as of now. The NSX for vSphere, which is the first one that has been deployed by hundreds of customers around the world. It is focused on the vSphere environments. And now for not a short time, but a slightly less time, we also have NSX-T, which is focused on a broader range of hypervisors. So at the moment, in the latest release that we have said that is available now, the VMC on AWS service is powered by NSX-T. So another important thing is you don't have to know how to install, how to operate, how to manage NSX environment. This is not your duty. We are doing this for you. You don't need to know how to manage NSX-T. Everything is done under the hood. You will be just using the user interface of VMC on AWS. But moving to NSX-T has unlocked us, VMware, more features, more performance, and more benefits under the hood. So this is the important part. And besides NSX data center, there are important aspects of VMware solutions, such as NSX Hybrid Connect, that are important for VMC on AWS service. Since we don't have so much time, we won't touch that a lot, but the use cases that we will touch are also using HCX or Hybrid Connect as well. So without further ado, let's talk about the advanced services, NSX advanced services in VMC on AWS. So when we say advanced services, what are the normal services, right? What are the trivial or what are the basic services? Of course, the main service you get from the duty of NSX is the connectivity. And logical switching, logical routing is what you normally use. And everything, as we call advanced, I can group them into three different pillars. They are, as you can see, connectivity, security, definitely important, and also visibility. Most of these new features that I will talk about are, we now welcome them in the latest release of VMC on AWS. They were on tech preview, as we call, for the last 3 months, and now they are generally available for public consumption as well. So let's just get right into that. Let's start from connectivity. Of course, when we say connectivity, especially in terms of advanced NSX services, is the connectivity between your on-premise data center and the public cloud, which is VMC on AWS. There are multiple ways to make this connection. As Nico has mentioned, the first and foremost method of doing that is the AWS Direct Connect. You might have heard of that, you might have used that. The main benefit of Direct Connect is bringing high bandwidth and low latency for your connection between your on-premises to your cloud reachability. And of course, VMC on AWS does support, and NSX does also support Direct Connect. Encryption IPsec VPN is also encouraged. It's also possible, but it's not a mandatory item. But you can definitely encrypt the traffic that is maintained by Direct Connect. So far, when the networking was handled by NSX for vSphere under the hood, we were able to use Direct Connect only for the management and the vMotion traffic, which was already good. But in the latest release, which is powered by NSXT under the hood, we are able to use Direct Connect connectivity option for any type of traffic. Not only for management and vMotion, but also complete workloads can also be carried over the Direct Connect service, which also brings the low latency and high throughput to those type of traffic types as well. Secondly, if you don't want to use Direct Connect, you can always use the public internet. Then we can help you with the NSX VPN options. This is very, very important as well. With NSX VPN, we have two types of connectivity flavors, the layer 2 and the layer 3. You can imagine why you might use the layer 2 if you want to extend the subnet, or versus you can do layer 3. These are all possible with NSX for a long time, and this is also possible with VMC on AWS as well. Just a very important point here, the endpoints, the right side, which is powered by NSX under the hood, is using NSX for connectivity, of course, right? The left side, which is on-premises, does not have to use NSX. So the VPN termination on the left side, it can be terminated on a router, on a firewall with VPN capabilities. It can be a traditional router. That's no problem. There is no requirement to use NSX on the left side of the VPN link. If you have NSX, that's also perfect as well. That's not a problem at all. Again, going back to the latest release that we announced recently, with the help of NSXT, there are a couple of benefits of NSXT over NSX for vSphere, and I think one of the most important one is that we are using now Intel's DPDK technology, data plane development kit technology, which helps us bring higher throughput and higher performance out of the hardware that we are working on. So this will definitely improve your VPN and traffic throughput performance drastically. Let's move on. So with VPN, we have two types, and now we have two types. We used to have one type only, which was the policy-based IPsec VPN. With the policy-based IPsec VPN, you were supposed to choose which subnets you want to expose across your sites, on-premise and cloud sites, which is okay, but once you want to add multiple subnets that you want to expose, or you want to deduct some of the subnets from the VPN communication, you had to do it manually, which is okay for maybe a small deployment, but for a very large deployment, that's a bit tedious of a process, right? And with the new version, we have a second option, which is a very beneficial one, is the route-based IPsec VPN. With the route-based IPsec VPN, everything looks similar, but we are actually establishing the VPN route communication with the help of a dynamic routing protocol, which is BGP. So BGP is now handling this route exchange and the exposing subnets to each other in a dynamic fashion. So all these manual tedious tasks that I mentioned to you does not become a problem anymore. The second benefit, besides being dynamic, is also, is the resiliency. On the right side, you have, of course, one router on the one end of the VPN. On the left side, you can maybe add a second router as a secondary VPN termination point. And with the help of BGP metrics, BGP routing techniques, you can choose one link over another. But should the first link fail, your second link can definitely continue the traffic continuity. So this is very important for resiliency aspect as well. After connectivity, I think maybe this is the most important aspect, is security. Just a show of hands. Has anyone is using NSX at the moment in their, I see a couple of hands. Perfect. So I'm sure the folks and colleagues here using NSX definitely have heard of Micro-Segmentation, because this is one of the most important features. This is one of the maybe easiest use case to deploy, and the best or easiest use case to get returns on as a benefit as well, in my opinion. And now, in the latest release, we are able to introduce micro-segmentation into the VMC on AWS as well. So for all the attendees here that haven't heard of micro-segmentation, You can see there are two logical networks, network A and network B. So they can be isolated from each other, which is how we did that in networking for tens of years. But with the help of micro-segmentation, you can further segment and further isolate within the network A and within the network B. So you can create compartments in your network as much as you want to create a smaller blast radius, as I say, in terms of an attack. So you can definitely block the east-west track spread perimeter in a drastic way. And in a normal firewall fashion, you generally work with IP addresses. You can block an IP address, you can block an IP subnet, which is not really practical. With this solution, you can also use keywords like VM names, or you can use security tags, for example. So every time a new VM is incepted, is created, starting with, let's say, web, you can assign it to a security policy. So you don't have to manually adjust your firewall policies as your VMs and as your workloads evolve in time. So this is very, very important and one of the most important additional features in the latest release. And the last one on my part is the visibility side. This is very, very important. This is also one of the features of NSXT. Now it also helps VMs on AWS benefit from, is that we have two features, the flow visibility and also traffic mirroring is now enabled in VMs on AWS. What do they mean? With flow visibility, we use a technique or we use a protocol called IPfix. So you can carry all the flow information to an IPfix collector so that you can analyze, monitor, troubleshoot, and also for compliance reasons that might be mandatory for you as well, and you can do the same thing too. The port mirroring side is, if anyone is from the networking side here, is what we've been doing in networking for a long time, in traditional networking. You can pipeline, you can collect traffic from a port, a virtual port, the incoming traffic, outgoing traffic, or bidirectional traffic to another receiver so that you can do processing, you can do monitoring, analysis, or another reason is compliancy once again. So as a summary, flow monitoring and also flow monitoring and packet mirroring is available in VMC on AWS at the moment. So these are the features, and now we will see with Nico's help what are the use cases that benefit from these products and features. So,
okay, thank you. Yeah, so now we've heard all the theory, all the new stuff. Now let's talk about practical use cases. We'll share stories about what our customers in EMEA are doing with VMC and how they're building their hybrid connectivity. So I guess you have to ask yourself a number of questions, right? So when you build your design. And one of the main questions is, do I need to stretch networks? Do I need to maintain the same IP when I migrate VM from my data center to the cloud? Right? That's key. I would say if you don't need to, keep it simple, just use BGP or IPsec VPN and leave it that way. You need to ask yourself, do I need that Direct Connect? Do I need that high bandwidth, low latency connection? Where are my application access from? Are they internal applications or are they access over the internet? Right? What about my security policy? Am I doing a network north-south security policies? Am I doing it centralized? Do I need micro-segmentation? And finally, on the operational side, in day-to operations, do I need to use some of the tools that Emre referred to around traffic analysis and packet logging? That's some of the questions you have to ask yourself. But the main thing is your network design will depend on your use case, right? So it will depending on what you're doing on the platform. Right? So let's go over some use cases. So one thing we see customers that's using VMC as what I would refer to as an infrastructure island. Right? So customers that just need a pool of compute and resources, even maybe for a short period of time for a project, and they just need to stand up a VMC environment and go on the console 2 hours later, they've got their SDDC cluster. Now we had a brave customer that wanted to virtualize a mainframe, right, a financial customer. So what they did is they ran an emulation of a mainframe on a Windows VM in VMC, right? No, why not? They did the project for 3 months. At the end of the project, they destroyed their SDDC, And that's fine, right? Sometimes you don't need to have this hybrid cloud. Here you don't have any hybrid connectivity. The only thing you need to do is open up a firewall port on your external firewall on the VMC side to allow traffic into the vCenter. Fairly straightforward use case. Another one is what we call an expansion. Right? We have many of our European customers that want to expand into a new market. Right? They see opportunities, they want to enter into a new region, they want to go into the US or in APAC, and they don't want to have to build a data center from scratch. Right? They just want to be able to stand up an environment, and with VMC, if the expansion doesn't work out, they're not left with hardware they don't need, right? They can just destroy it and move on. But if on the other end it works, then they can scale up and down. So here, we're not actually migrating data. It's almost as if it's a new environment, it's a new site. So you don't need to stretch network, right? It's just a VPN. And here we would use the route-based VPN. You can have two for resilience. Obviously, and you would set up hybrid link mode between your two vCenter for connectivity. And you might keep some of your AD and DNS central services on-prem, but this would essentially be a brand new site that you would deploy. Right? Again, fairly straightforward environment. Now we see more and more of customers that really want to use VMC as to burst to the cloud. Right? We're working with financial institutions and some TV channels that are based in London. They're running out of capacity and they need to be able to stretch to the cloud. And here the use case is really, when you have constraints like space and power and cooling, and you don't want to stand up a brand new environment, what you can do is create an SDDC, link it up with a Direct Connect, and stretch maybe your network with HCX, and move your virtual machine from one side to the other. And just give you some relief from your on-prem environment. And that's fairly straightforward to set up. Okay, again, the benefit is it's on demand, right? So you can just stand up in a couple of hours. Now, let's cover some of use cases around migration of applications, right? So think about, why would you move one type of application to VMC? Why would you move, even a single one? Well, first, maybe for performance perspective, right? So on VMC, you get all-flash NVMe SSD disks. So the performances are pretty phenomenal. Right? So you might want to, if you have performance issues on-prem, you might want to put these applications on VMC because they are likely to run better. Okay, that's one use case. We have customers that are migrating to the public cloud and might hit a roadblock. Well, there are some applications that are very hard to refactor and move to native AWS or any other cloud providers. And why? For example, legacy operating system. You can't run a legacy Windows VM on native AWS. You can't run a Linux 32-bit VM on native AWS. Whereas anything that is supported today on vSphere, you can transport it and run it on vSphere in the cloud. Right? It's the same stuff. And just sometimes there's no or very little value to transform your applications. Right? You might just want to lift and shift it to the cloud. Right? There's a lot of effort in doing that. And for some application, it's worth it. For many complex or legacy applications, you could just simply carry it across to VMware Cloud on AWS. Okay. So cover one example, which is if you had like a single tier application and you want to move it to VMC on AWS, right? So in this scenario, well, let's assume that this application can handle an IP readdressing, right? This application can pick up a new IP. It's not hard-coded. It's not the end of the world. So in this case, it's again fairly simple. You stand up your VMware environment. You would build IPsec VPN between the two sites. You might use a Direct Connect if it's if you have the requirements. And you start moving your applications to the cloud. Right? You might again leave your main common services on-prem, but you move your application, and you can use the tools that we talked about around the IP fix and packet logging to understand the flow requirements, and you can start using micro-segmentation within the cloud. Okay, so that's assuming you just want to move one single app or a type of application to the cloud. Now, one of probably the most common use case we see on VMC is what we call DC evacuation. So customers that literally want to shut down or consolidate the number of data centers they have, and they want to move everything out of a data center. And in this scenario, what the tool you would use for the job would be HCX. Okay, that's a perfect tool to essentially interconnect your private cloud to VMC on AWS. And literally here you would move everything, right? If you have some physical workload, you would have to virtualize them, of course. But you would bulk migrate everything. And HCX gives you the ability to schedule when you would do the migration. So you can literally exit data center, in a week and do the switchover at a weekend. Now, what's interesting is because everything is bi-directional with VMC, some customers are asking us, well, I just want to, what we call a swing space. I want to evacuate a data center for, let's say, a few hours, a week, and come back. And why you would do that? Well, many of our customers are running on 5.5 or below. And with 5.5 being end of life, we have customers that actually want to do an upgrade with minimal risk. So they literally want to evacuate everything out of a cluster, move it to VMC, and then they have an empty cluster on-prem, they upgrade it, I know it's not going to break anything, and when it's done, they bring everything back. Okay, I think it's a scenario that could appeal to a few people. Okay. Another use case we see, which is using VMC for disaster recovery purposes. And that's many of our customers don't want to have a ghost data center lying there and having to pay for a secondary data center. So you could use VMC for a disaster recovery site. It's it's an add-on service, we call it Site Recovery, and it uses Site Recovery Manager and vSphere replication to copy the data across. Okay, so it's tools that we've had for a long time. So in this scenario, I'm doing a DR bit for one type of application. Right? Let's assume it's just one application that fails over from on-prem to the cloud. Now, in this scenario, and that's something that many of our customers are asking for, they want the ability to, when they fail over to the DR site, to maintain the same IP. They want the VM to keep the same IP address, okay? They don't want to have to orchestrate it as part of the SRM process. Now, again, you can use VMC in this scenario. You would use SRM, you would use our stretch network to extend a network from on-prem to the cloud. And then you would go and extend your layer 2. And if you had to invoke your disaster recovery, then everything will switch across and start again on the other side. Now, the one aspect that we need people to be aware of is around the default gateway for the virtual machine. All right? So if you have a stretch network, whether you're using HCX or the NSX L2 VPN, the default gateway for your VMs has to stay on-prem. Okay, that's one of the, I would say, limitations we have today, which is something we're working on So what happens if you have a VM in VMC with the 172.16.30.21 wants to talk to a VM that is not stretched on VMC on AWS, the traffic has to go back to its default gateway and over across to the cloud, okay? Which is some hairpinning, which is obviously suboptimal. Goes back to what I said earlier. Think about when you do a L2 VPN, when you stretch network, do you need it for permanent, or do you need just for temporary for migration? So just consider this as you go to the cloud. So in this case, what you would do, you would essentially convert that extended network from extended to rooted. So it's only a local to VMC once you do the failover, and something you can orchestrate as part of the VMC and AWS SRM workflow. Okay. Good on time? We're good? Yep. So one thing we get asked a lot is, looking back to what you said before around micro-segmentation, we have many of our customers that are running NSX on-prem for micro-segmentation. And they want the ability to copy the security policies to the cloud. It's not something we can do today. It's, I know customers are asking for it, but it's something we're working on. It's something we're calling the federation. So the idea is to federate multiple NSX, the on-prem one and the cloud one, and essentially have an umbrella above your NSX manager so that you have consistent security policies between on-prem and VMware Cloud. So that when you start doing a vMotion, the security policy would follow it. Until then, what you can do is essentially you could use the APIs to copy configuration between the two sites, or do it twice. Okay, which is something that is a clear limitation today. Okay. So we've gone very fast, but it gives us plenty of time for questions. We need a microphone.
Will there be able to federate between versions? Yeah. Will I be able to federate between versions at all, this upcoming thing that you're working on?
I am not sure. I can't tell you whether. I'll have to ask our product team to. I don't want to give you the wrong answer.
Okay.
But that's a fair question.
I think something I can say is a very good question. At the moment with NSX for vSphere, we do have cross vCenter NSX. Maybe if you are using NSX for vSphere, you can have two separate NSX systems and you can make a connection between those two. So it's the same single pane of glass. I don't want to use that term every time, but this is a single pane of glass. You can manage two NSX environments from a single user interface. But those NSX systems have to be the same version. 6.4, 6. Anything at the moment. With NSX-T, we don't have a cross-NSX connectivity yet. This is not this session, unfortunately, that we are not both of us from the BU, and we cannot say when this will come. I'm sure this will come. So when this solution comes, I think VMs on AWS will also benefit from that immediately, because we are using, as I said before, NSX-T underneath, right? But from my experience and from our experience from NSX for vSphere, two NSXs have to be the same version. So that can be the case that NSX-T versions have to be the same version as well. But I think we will all both see, and whatever roadmap brings us, we will use that. But none of us are able to give a fixed answer at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Hey, when federation comes, we'll be able to stretch Geneva segments from on-prem to the cloud?
Yeah, I mean, it's even something you could do today, right? So it's not really a requirement. The stretching does not depend on the underlying virtual network. You will be able to stretch network from your NSX-T-based environment into VMC.
But it's not native, isn't it? You don't stretch it in your segment, you just snap it to a level VPN.
Yeah, that's because that's dependent on the MTU, which is not something we can control on with VMC. Okay.
What about migrating existing?
Sorry, the microphone.
One more question.
What about the migration of existing NSX-V-based VMC customers to T? How is it going to work?
So good question. So we have a number of customers that are today on NSX-V, so it will be, I would say, in the next few weeks to months, we'll be managing with our ISRE team, doing a managed failover, switch over to NSX-T. That's all managed by VMware again, because that we take care of all of this. It's something that is going to be transparent for our customers.
Just a little bit about integration with existing AWS services. Some of them maybe don't make any sense, but for example, a multi-HA with a load balancer, integrating with Route 53, would that make sense? Can that be done?
Yeah, so I just had a session this morning where I was talking about integration with native AWS services. So one example I used was think about a hybrid application where the web tier would run on AWS and the database tier would run on VMC. And access to that web application would go over Route 53, will hit an elastic load balancer, will be load balanced to multiple EC2 instances, and then our traffic will go over to the elastic network interface, to VMC and AWS, to the database. So yeah, absolutely, you can do this. You can do it today.
What about other services? These are maybe a bit more. Can you look at VCP flow logs or turn on guard duty?
So some of these services might not. So start again. So what would you apply to it? This type of services.
Okay. So for example, if I wanted to see the flow logs to detect any abnormality on the network traffic and do some DevSecOps, maybe fire off functions, block firewalls.
So for VMC, you would use things like Log Insight and Network Insight. Right? So you could export this IPfix into a visualized Network Insight or a log Intelligence, which is Log Insight as a service, and get that visibility. Right? So today we can't export the flow logs into the AWS logging machine because it's a different format, and also we have our own logging platform.
And guard duty?
I'm not sure how applicable it will be to VMC on AWS. But I'm not super familiar with what guard duty can do.
Is it possible to extend layer 2 between VMC and VPC?
Today, no. So you would have one NSX subnet in VMC, and you will have a subnet in your VPC on AWS, right? And the way it works is whenever you create a logical network on VMC and AWS, you will see in your route table in your VPC, that's route to, and with a target of the elastic network interface. So we do all the plumbing behind the scene, you don't have to do anything. But we don't have the ability to stretch network between VMC and VPC.
Hello there, my name is Simon. You have mentioned about the VRNI for NSX-T on the AWS. My question is how it's different for VRNI for NSX-V, which I, for example, may have on-premise already. Is it something that is enabled underneath, or is it just like the NSX-T manager will become additional data source for VRNI that you have to deploy? Thank you.
Okay, so I mean for VRNI for NSX-T, that's supported.
It would not make any difference. So let's say that your VRNI is on premises. You just point your VMs on AWS workloads to an IPfix collector. which is your VRNI on-premises. So in the past, VRNI did not support NSXT. They do now for the last one year or maybe 9 months, let's say. So there's no difference for you. So everything, every flow information, every context is going to appear on your VRNI dashboard the normal way.
Question?
Hello. In the picture before, you showed us the fact that if you have two VM in VMC,
Yeah.
there are different subnet that need to backhaul on-prem, no?
Yeah.
To reach a default gateway. What is the roadmap here, or also in terms of timing, I would say? It's something that we can expect.
I would expect, but not, I can't commit again, but I would expect in the first half of next year. It's something that we know how to do it. We've done it on-prem. We just have to prioritize features when we go to VMC. Right now, our priority was to shift over to NSXT so we don't have a mismatch of customers. And then now we can focus on doing things like what we call local egress and be able to use local gateway in VMC as well.
I think this is the right time to mention that you can actually see the actual roadmap of VMs on a public website, which is very interesting for me. I've never seen this before. So the entire roadmap is published online on the public website, vmc.vmware.com/roadmap.
Yeah.
I understand. You can Google that. So everything that is available today, everything that is in the tech preview mode, everything that is in the roadmap, you can search everything. In context of network security, in context of storage, integration with AWS services, everything is out there. So definitely I strongly suggest you to have a look at that as well.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
Take this.